Let's unpack this now with Dalia Fahmy. She's the Director of International Relations and an Associate Professor of Political Science at Long Island University. Dalia, always good to speak to you. When we saw those images early on of people rushing to get the sustenance that they haven't been able to access for months now, shocking is really not even the word to describe it, because it speaks so much to this desperation that Palestinians are feeling. But surely it also should have been expected that the aid organization delivering such aid doesn't have experience in Gaza to do this, and something like this was easily going to happen.
That's exactly right. Now, you have to remember, it's been 11 weeks since anything has entered Gaza, not just food, medical aid, but also things like baby formula, batteries for generators to desalinate or clean water. The level of desperation has been reached weeks ago, and the UN has been saying for days now, I think about 5 days ago, that we are on the brink of famine in Gaza. And so we saw today was expected, but also there's a lot of politics that we need to discuss here. Now, this organization is set up to actually bypass the United Nations. And what we saw is that the people doing the distribution are mercenaries, former military, and private contractors. They are not those who are trained in humanitarian aid distribution. They have been criticized, for example, by the World Food Kitchen leader today. What we're seeing is the politicization of food aid. Yesterday, we saw the head of that very organization, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a former U.S. Marine, resign, saying, and I quote, that he would not be able to fulfill the principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. The head of the organization, a former U.S. Marine, said that himself in his resignation letter yesterday. Now, this plan, backed by the United States, led by Israel, is really a private organization that's actually in the aims of making money. So a lot of the financial aid, for example, going from the United States to Gaza is actually going to these private contractors. And so this has been warned about. I was on the show 5 days ago talking about the warnings that were issued by the UN and by Doctors Without Borders about the nature of this program, the nature of the politicization, that this raises grave humanitarian, ethical, and security concerns, but really international legal concerns. And so this process is not just in the making for the past 11 weeks, but it's really meant to bypass the United Nations, that politicizing food distribution to 2.1 million people and making conditional food on the forced displacement. This is what the warning that was issued by the UN and by Doctors Without Borders last week. And so we know that this entire process is actually in direct violation of UN Security Council Resolution 2720. And so the politics behind this is extremely troubling. While we are focusing on these images, I want you to remember that these are folks that are trained in actually creating prisons. And so the aid distribution was done in the mechanism of population control and prison policy. And so the images, while they are shocking, are actually not surprising, because we have been receiving warnings about this for weeks.
And those warnings continue. The UN has said this is not the right way to deliver aid. The World Food Kitchen saying the same thing. And as you say, this would appear another way of the Israelis trying to control Palestinians, especially given the fact that what we're hearing is that these aid distribution sites aren't even in northern Gaza. People there wanting aid may need to come to central Gaza, even southern Gaza, and then who knows if they would be allowed to even return to the north. Would that be part of the military strategy that Israel would be trying to enforce here?
And that is what the UN and Doctors Without Borders warned about last week, saying that this is part of a process of forced displacement. When you have to move 5 kilometers to receive a bag of wheat, you're not going to go back 5 kilometers because you can't. You've been starving for 11 weeks. And so as part of the process of moving populations, today the UN chief aide Tom Fletcher said that this is actually part of the process of forced displacement, and that's why they are actually bypassing the United Nations. The Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council said that this is militarized, privatized, politicized and not in conformity with neutrality, that the people behind this are actually military, ex-CIA, ex-military people, and it's not part of the system that actually had been working when the UN was implementing food distribution months ago.
We're going to have to leave it there, but always appreciate your thoughts and analysis. Dalia Fahmy there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.